not recording on the podcast right now, but we are Facebook Live. So anybody that's joining Dr. Suzana and I on Facebook Live, feel free to make a little comment or a shout out. Once we hit the recorder button, we cannot acknowledge any comments, but feel free to put any questions up there. Dr. Suzana is a psychologist and a expert at social media as well as Marvel Comics, as you are going to see here in a moment, and we're going to have a lot of fun with this interview today. It's also a very serious interview, but it's also going to be a very fun interview. I can't wait, and I'm going to hit the recorder button in a moment here. I think I just practiced the bio. So was that an acceptable? was that a passable
okay.
Bio? Okay. So
yeah,
that's great. It's tough enough when you write your own bio or any copywriting that you haven't actually spoken out yet. And so and when other people send you the bio and you haven't spoken it out loud, you gotta practice that. Actually, I didn't have to edit yours, so that was great. Usually I have to trim some of these suckers down quite a bit. So, all right. Levels. I'm looking at my audio levels, Dr. Suzana. If you can give me a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
All right, we're about even. Any other questions, comments before we go?
No,
or
I'm ready.
Before we start, actually. No, before we go. All of that. All right, I'm going to work into, I'm checking my RAM. I'm going to free up some more RAM. Hey, Dr. Tim. Good to see ya. Yeah, we got all kinds of... You're going to love this, Dr. Tim, especially. I don't know if you like comic book characters or not, but this is, who doesn't like book characters? I'm going to talk about Wolverine here in a moment. All right, got my Excel spreadsheet up. I'm ready to rock. How about you?
I'm ready.
All right. Well,
Let's do it.
Good. Well, we are going to go live in 3, 2. We are live with Suzana Flores. Suzana, are you ready to talk?
I am.
Dr. Suzana E. Flores is a clinical psychologist specializing in pop culture, mythology, and social media expression and addiction. Keynote speaker and the author of Untamed, the Psychology of Marvel's Wolverine, as well as Face Hooked, How Facebook Affects Our Emotions, Relationships, and Lives, with international book deals in South Korea and Poland. Dr. Suzana Flores, welcome to the talk.
Oh, thank you. Glad to be here.
We're going to have a fun conversation today because it is all about your recent branded talk. It's a TEDx talk. It's called Untamed, What Wolverine Teaches Us About Rage.
Yes.
And so the whole identification with a comic book character. I guess if this was the 70s, we'd be talking about Dr. David Banner and the Incredible Hulk, but a little bit more contemporary time with Wolverine. And tragically, it really comes with a very personal story. So please take us behind the talk. We can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. As I've told some of my friends and colleagues, I wasn't raised a geek. I became one as an adult.
Congratulations! Welcome to the club.
To the club. Yeah, I'm a proud member, card-carrying member now. And it was very surprising that of all superheroes that I would be attracted to, it was Wolverine. And it comes based on, a personal tragedy, a violation, and something that happened a few years ago. And I had lost a part of myself during that time, meaning like the tougher side of myself, the blunt, the opinionated part, and that's what trauma does to you. It affects you, it numbs you. And in losing myself, I one day came across an image of Wolverine that I could really identify, where he's in the sewer, and I put up that illustration in my talk. So anyway, he's in the sewer, and he's really pissed off, and he's decided, like, okay, suckers, it's my turn. So he goes after the people that put him in the sewer because he was not going to tolerate it. And it was that rage or that determination, that bellicosity that I really identified with, not just for overcoming personal victimization, but also societal oppression in the sense that Wolverine, as a mutant and therefore X-Men, represents the struggles of minorities in America. And so that's what my talk is about, is, like that rage has sometimes had a bad rap, and that sometimes we need to express it appropriately. So that's what Wolverine represented to me, is that, he's the muscle of the X-Men group. He's the guy that does the jobs that no one else wants to do. He gets his hands dirty, and on top of that has to cope with severe trauma and being misunderstood by society, so therefore he's a loner. But he does all of these things, but he's also dualistic in nature. He's also kind and compassionate. So I identified with him in the sense of, I think that in a sense we're all kind of damaged in some way. We've all seen stuff. We've all had to overcome our own struggles, and that's who he is. And that's what we can learn from him, is that sometimes we do have to stand up to bullies, and sometimes we do have to speak our truth, even if other people don't like it. And sometimes we have to be courageous enough to not only defend ourselves, but to defend other people who are oppressed in this world.
Dr. Suzana, you're talking about a metaphor for leadership here.
Yes. And actually the theme of the TED Talk was leadership.
Mm-hmm. So, it's like, leadership, it's best when, it's great if everything's smooth sailing and rosy and nobody has to kick someone in the rear or say something that maybe isn't the nicest thing. But that when push comes to shove, you've got to step up and lead and let the chips fall where they may, and other people misunderstand you and say horrible things about you. And that's the only way things turn around once they start sliding. And so a beautiful metaphor. Now, it's Hugh Jackman plays Wolverine in the movies, correct?
Absolutely. Okay. I'm a huch fan.
Just making sure I'm right on that, because I'm geeky, but I'm not that geeky, or I might get my details a little bit off.
I actually I was speaking to his agency, and so they allowed me to use some of his personal photos in the TED Talk itself, and so he granted me those photographs to use.
Well, that's not easy to do.
No, it really wasn't.
For mine, I tried to put something, Fred Flintstone in there, had to do a little bit of searching, and it's not always available. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Was his agent or his office receptive? What did they think of you?
They were wonderful. They were wonderful. Very, very helpful, as accommodating as they could be. And so I'm still waiting to hear back what Hugh Jackman's impressions are. Very much looking forward to that. But I hope that I did Hugh Jackman proud, and on a metaphorical level, I hope I did Wolverine proud.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I can't help but want to pivot over to the whole Facebook piece and some of your thoughts on what the heck kind of crazy world we're in right now on Facebook. Now, hi, Facebook Live, everybody. Some of you are listening to the podcast, but we are Facebook Living this in all honest disclosure. But it seems like when you're talking about Wolverine, when you're talking about misunderstanding, when you're talking about image and being a superhero and rage, and then we talk about social media, there's a unholy marriage there that many of us are trying to wade through and trying to make a positive influence with very shark-infested waters. So please take us into that whole, let's just open the door and go in there.
Okay, so Facehooked came about when I was in private practice in Chicago, and I began to notice a dramatic change in my client's clinical presentation, which was namely social media. And I wasn't really into it that much at the time. So whenever I'd suggest, how about you take a break from it, I'd get the deer in the headlights look, are you kidding me? That's so not going to happen. So I did definitely notice the addiction factor, but I also noticed that people were dealing with anxiety and depression based on interactions that were based on misunderstandings or jealousy or passive aggressive behavior, etc. And then the day came when I had to hospitalize a client because of it was a very intense interaction that occurred. Namely, his fiance posted, changed her relationship status, and changed his name and photograph to that of his best friend. So he discovered that his engagement was over on social media, and his family and coworkers knew before he even did. And there was more to the story, of course, but at that moment, I was thinking, like, what is happening to people? Like, how is it possible that something that was, known to be very private, is now just open game, right, to be shared on a very public platform. So it was the public humiliation behind that interaction that led to certain hospitalizations. And so that's when I decided to start interviewing people on both the good, the bad, and the ugly on social media. And I was getting responses from people all over the world on both the positive aspects and the negative. Now, I will say in one of my talks with Facehooked, I included a slide in 2014 where I said, well, what would happen if world leaders began to share their message in 140 characters? And, and I remember
2014?
even, 2014.
Look what you created, Dr. Suzana.
And it's your fault. Sure, blame it on the shrink, right? But I remember thinking or saying it out loud, like, well, that clearly will never happen, right? And boy, was I wrong. And I almost wish that I had waited until this year to publish Facehooked because of everything that has happened. And so when people ask me, like, well, what do you think about how it's being used? And I said, to be very forthcoming, it's my worst nightmare realized, because it is leading to polarization and chaos and misunderstanding. And I think that, whichever side you're on, is that certain offices, they're too important to be sharing information just on 140 characters. And so what's happening is that we're receiving multiple messages from multiple sources multiple times during the day. And I don't even know on a psychological level if we're designed to handle that much information. So what we're doing is we're putting blinders on, right? I can only watch, or receive information from my side because I cannot handle reading anything from the other side. And so that's leading to part of the problem.
So we've got confirmation biases. We've got Dunning-Kruger effect, which is, I think, another way of saying that. We've got silos. We've got severe and increasing polarization. And we also have a whole bunch of really frightening studies that we're starting to see more and more of about how it's inversely proportionate. If I'm not incorrect here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the more social media screen time, as I'm watching, my face on a screen right now, ironically, the more time we're spending,
irony.
Yeah, the irony. I was talking about Starbucks with someone else in a not a good way, drinking out of my Starbucks mug.
Sure.
But it's like the more screen time we have, the more our emotional health goes into the tank. So if there was like a saying for our time where before it would be like, I think, therefore I am, and in Facehooked I mentioned I connect, therefore I am. That's where we're at, and the more connected we are, the lonelier we really are, or we're lonelier than we think that we are. It's a faux connection. It's not a real soul connection.
Right.
It's not.
It's an illusion.
Fishing with your grandpa, in Little House on a Prairie. This is like mean people who can not just dump you over the phone or dump you via text or
publicly,
privately message you on Facebook. But she changed her entire status, and this guy was hard at
blindsided.
Work. He was hard at work doing, focusing on what he needed to be focused. And at the end of the day, he finds out in the worst possible way that I've ever heard. And he was engaged.
Right. And months away from being married.
You had to intervene and hospitalize him to make sure he would be okay.
Yes. And I never, in all my years of practice, I have never seen anyone so not enthusiastic, but motivated to be hospitalized. And a lot of that came from take my phone, take my laptop, just needed to be unwired for a while because his phone was going off the hook. His mother was calling, her mother was calling, everybody was calling. It was like this super big scandal, and he just couldn't believe it.
He gave his electronics to you.
Well, to the nurse.
To the nurse.
And, he just really wanted to
he
disconnect.
Cut the cord.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. He just really needed to come back to reality for that moment.
Well,
and so, I don't.
That's helpful, right? That he knew enough to know that he wanted to get away from the electronics.
At least momentarily. Now, I do want to clarify, I'm a huge social media fan, and I, obviously we're even on, Skype. So Facebook is not like a get off of social media book. It's more about be aware of what's happening. You know, like our friends are no longer quite our friends. They're our audience, and we've become performers.
Yeah.
And we, you know, instead of enjoying a sunset or whatever, we feel the need to record it and check ourselves in. And there's all of this, you know, external validation thing going on, right? And a certain amount of validation is normal, but it's more about like, let's just be aware of what's happening so that we can make different choices. So I want people to continue to enjoy their digital connections, but second only to their offline realities, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes so much sense. And thank you for not throwing the little baby Facebook, baby Twitter out with the
Right.
soiled bathwater of it all, because it's really important to be nuanced about this and to have a degree of appreciation for the new possibility. I mean, we couldn't have Be the Talk podcast if there wasn't this technology available. And so if we're, you know, savvy and mindful, we can actually make some good things happen and minimize the downside of this stuff.
Yeah. And so, you know, after I started working on Facebook, I got a lot of positive feedback from it, you know, especially since I included vignettes of real life stories that people shared. And that kind of led to my interest in, you know, and pop culture, what motivates people. And obviously social media motivates people. But so, you know, that led to the interest of the comic book world, which is very vast and very interesting. And, you know, with the character Wolverine, a very misunderstood character. But, you know, just like we build castles on social media about our lives, right? These writers and these illustrators, you know, they also project a piece of themselves onto the comic book page and the panels. And so a lot of Wolverine's story is reflective of some of the creators, you know, of their personal struggles and their identification with the struggles of this character. And so, you know, I learned a lot about, and I'm still learning a lot about the comic book world and cosplay and, you know, everything that goes along with it. And I just wondered, like, what draws so many people to these comic book characters? And it is because they, in many ways, are very human-like and represent who we are. So right. It's a loose association, but there is an association even between the two areas.
Yeah, for sure. So now we want to associate with your area at Talk Universe. So I'm going to do a very dramatic pivot at this point because we're here for you. We want you to spread your ideas. Now, Dr. Suzana was able to make these great connections between comic book characters, a tragic incident in her life, social media world, all of these things, and she's using all that stuff for good. We want you to share your ideas that are truly worth spreading. So it's time for the Blitz round, in which I will ask Dr. Suzana a series of either or questions related to the preparation and performance of her talk. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Question number 1. Were you selected to speak or did you apply?
I was selected.
Are you a memorizer, improviser, or a blender?
Both.
But I told you 3, so which 2?
Oh, you said 3.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I am
the third option is blender.
Blender. I'm
okay,
blender.
So that was... All right.
Apparently, I need more Starbucks right now.
Well, hey,
so,
I just had a little frightening moment of cognitive dissonance right there, and maybe you did too, Talk Universe. I'm going to keep everybody honest here on the talk. All right. Seasoned performer or new to the stage?
Oh, I think I'm seasoned at this point.
I think Talk Universe thinks so too. All right.
Yeah,
Nerves or the zone or neither or both?
I think I was more in the zone at that point. I was nervous at the beginning that, you know, you get this announcement like, oh, you've been selected to do a TED Talk. And I'm like, yay. And then I was like, oh, no. You know, so more nervous at the beginning. But then by the time I got there, I was fine.
Is there a tip, technique, or tool that helped you prepare?
The stuff that I know about deep breathing definitely helped. Repetition, having an audience, and you know, to practice with, and just being open to feedback from others. You know, I was very grateful to other TEDx speakers and my agent, you know, Liz, who helped me, and others. You know, so I would just say keep an open mind, be open to feedback, and adjust.
Here's the cut for time question. What part of the talk that was the most painful for you to cut out?
To cut out? I'm trying to, I don't know if I cut out that much, to be honest with
Oh,
you. I think everything was important, talking about, my assault, talking about societal oppression and Untamed, basically the need for rage in our lives, in the sense of just making us aware of what is wrong and what we need to do to change it.
what was the impact of your talk in the room that day?
There was a lot of silence when I mentioned the assault. I noticed the breathing had changed, I would just think the silence, it hit the audience in a way I wasn't even quite expecting, and there was some humor when we were talking about the Wolverine character and his love of the ladies and the drinking and the whatever. Again, he's he's human, and he has human, habits that we all do as well. And so I would say the humor and the silence that hit the audience.
It's a performance. So what's the most unexpected, strange, or just plain weird thing that happened during or right before your talk?
I had to choose my shoes carefully because heels were not good because of that carpet. We had a very shaggy carpet, and so that was just like a minor thing, but it wasn't minor to me because I needed to move and readjust. And so I would say, bring a couple of pairs just to make sure that that wouldn't happen. And so it's something that men perhaps don't think about, but women certainly do.
Talk Universe, that's a first, and that's a good one. Be careful. You don't want to be on one of these, we're talking about social media and social shaming and all that stuff. I'm just thinking of viral memes of supermodels tripping on the catwalk. You don't want that happening to you on your talk
Right,
someday.
right,
So that was,
exactly.
in the words of Indiana Jones' father, you chose wisely.
Yeah, yeah. And so the second I saw the rug, I had a yeah.
I think
And so, yeah, once I saw the rug, I'm like, can't wear the stilettos, need to be more practical here.
Or was it, that wasn't Indiana Jones' father. It was like the guy, the angel guy in, I think, The Last Crusade that was there in the room with the Holy Grail or whatever it was. All right. Never mind all that talk, Universe. I'm just, I hope that I just got to say this, Dr. Suzana, I hope you can make it to like Comic-Con and just be like their featured expert or something. Do you ever think of doing something like that?
Yeah, I'm actually going to be at Terrificon in Connecticut in August together with Roy Thomas, who is one of the creators of Wolverine. And so we're going to be doing a panel together, and I'm going to be featured as an expert.
Oh, you're already on your way. We've been enjoying our conversation. Very fun. And also at times very sobering conversation with Dr. Suzana Flores about her talk, Untamed, What Wolverine Teaches Us About Rage. And before we come back to her for the final word of advice for you, Talk Universe, want to let you know where you can go to check out that talk. You can type it in, or you can go to the show notes page at bethetalk.com, and we'll have a little clickable link for you. You can also go to drsuzanaflores.com. Dr. D.R. Suzana, S-U-Z-A-N-A, Flores, F-L-O-R-E-S, drsuzanaflores.com. Back over to you with the final word of advice for Talk Universe.
Find your voice and make it loud. And I say that even with, a little choke in my voice, is because that was also part of my talk, is that's what I needed to do to heal, is find my voice and say it unapologetically. And that's what Wolverine did for me. And that's what the TEDx talk did for me, too.
Suzana Flores, thank you so much for coming on the talk today and sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thank you for having me on your show.
All right, that's it. Great interview. That was fun.
Thank you. No, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Yeah, well, we're still on Facebook Live, so just be aware of that. But hey, if you have any questions for Dr. Suzana, we are a few minutes ahead, which is good. I'm going to read out some comments here. Dr. Tim, who's an former retired organ professor, says, looking forward to it. Allison says, hi, Nathan. My friend Bob says, this is awesome, and it looks like you just sold a book, Dr. Suzana. Allison wrote back. Allison said, just ordered Faced Hooked. Can't wait to read it. Excellent interview. So this is a first. I shouldn't say it's a first, but it is. So this is great. And if you have any questions, just type her in, or we will go offline here in a couple of moments. because I can't have any real candid conversation from the interviewee side if we're on Facebook, just for all the reasons that we talked about today in the last 20 minutes or so.
Yeah, we are living paradox right now, aren't we?
We live in a world where your soon-to-be spouse can dump you and marry your boyfriend or girlfriend or your best friend on Facebook, and you're the last to know.
To know about it.
Oh, and you end up in therapy and in some institution somewhere making sure on some kind of intensive watch. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
So you saw me picking my jaw up for the next couple of minutes.
Well, and that's what happened to me too. Like anyone who knows me knows I'm very rarely like without words. And that day my jaw dropped. It was one of those, like, I couldn't believe it. And I was thinking of writing a book for a while, but I'm a psychologist, not a writer. And there's fear and doubt. Every writer knows that. And after that day, I was like, okay, fear or no fear, I'm going to at least have to give it a shot because, if I could help even 5 people, then it's worth it.
For real.
And
for sure. All right, Facebook, you didn't ask questions quickly enough. Thank you so much. And this will be a shareable asset for you, Dr. Flores. So
thank you so much.
This is going to be great. So we're going to go off Facebook, but we're going to stay online here.